Hello, welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 153 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 9 of A Storm of Swords, that's Bran 1.
So the plan is we're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, Mackelly? Haven't seen you for ages.
I know, I had to think, how does our show begin again?
It has been a while.
It's good to see you, though. How are you doing?
Likewise. I'm good. I'm tired. You know how it is getting back from vacation. Things are. You have a lot to do.
Yes, and we are recording once again very early in the morning, up with the sun.
So my vacation comprised a week at a lake with a boat so that we could wakeboard and board games. So if it rained, we didn't have to sit there bored, and quite a bit of booze.
No wonder you were gone so long. I'm surprised you ever came back.
Yeah, it is pretty idyllic.
Yeah.
But wakeboarding every day takes a toll, let me tell you.
I'm sure it does.
So I was gone for a week, and on the Monday I was really sore in the belly. The belly was where I was really feeling it.
Okay.
And then I think it was the Monday evening, I took a real fall, like smashed my face down into the water, and it really strained my belly. The muscles were already stiff, and then they got so I was like, oh, it's not good. So I got up and did it again.
Of course, right?
And, yeah. So I had 5 consecutive identical falls. They were all like the same fall, trying the same trick, falling the same way. The second of which is the one that really hurt, and then the 5th of which really hurt. I took a day and a half off wakeboarding after that one.
Oh, wow! You finally learned the lesson on the 5th time.
And then on the Thursday when I picked back up wakeboarding, I never tried that trick again. Mm-hmm. I mean, that trick was it's not really a trick, it's just jumping from my perspective, the right side of the wake to the left side.
Okay.
And I think what happened was, for that jump, you have to use those stomach muscles to make the jump.
Right.
And so I wasn't making the jump properly, and so I was landing and then stretching those same stomach muscles on the landing, you see. So
yes, well, you gave it a shot.
Yeah. Apart from that, I had a great time, and my wakeboarding is like 10 times better than it was.
But there's that.
My body is racked with pain, but my wakeboarding has improved.
Your wakeboarding has improved, and that's really the pain is worth the gain, really.
Oh, for sure.
When it comes to
and both Carson and Lucas wakeboarded for the first time.
Really?
Successfully, yeah. They've. Huh. I don't have. Lucas had tried before.
I would have thought Lucas probably had.
Carson's had bad shoulders, so she hasn't even tried before. But both of them tried and successfully got up. And
all right.
Soon as Lucas got up, he let go with one hand and flexed. My first 2 photos of Carson when she got up were of the sky, because I was so panicked that she got up. I was like...
The sky, and then a fish under the water. Then the mud at the bottom of the lake. Well, that sounds like a fantastic time.
Yeah, we had a great week. It sounds like you had a great week too.
You can tell that by my notes, huh?
Yes.
My notes say Mac's terrible, awful, good-for-nothing week.
Do tell.
Well, as you know, my in-laws, Stacy's sister and her family, and my mother-in-law were here. They were coming. No, they were here when we last recorded. That's why we recorded so early, because we were trying to do it without a bunch of people walking around above me. Well, they came, and 3 of the 6 tested positive for COVID while they were here. So they left. And then Sunday, I was like, do I feel something? I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just my mind. Monday morning, I woke up and there was no doubt. I had fever, aches, chills, astonishing headache. And tested positive. I mean, the test, like, there's the control line and then there's the sample line.
Never had a COVID test, so no.
Okay.
Don't know that,
well,
but
you swab your nose. You put the nose swab into the little cardboard thing that tells you, it has the control line and then your sample line. Like sometimes it's a little faint, like when there's a positive test or it takes a while to show up. Mine was like immediate. Like the minute the minute it went into the cardboard jumped and tried to run away. And oh my gosh, I haven't been that sick in 20 years probably.
Oh, sorry to hear it.
And the culmination of it all was Wednesday. Still fever and aches and chills and all that kind of stuff. I had 2-hour-long training. It might have been 2.5-hour-long training with Kristen A, not D.
Oh.
And I still got a fever, but I had, I needed to know this stuff. So I'm doing my best to follow along. I got a headache. I'm exhausted and achy. While we are about an hour into our training, my fever breaks. And I go from, it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, when your fever breaks, you start to feel a little better. The headaches, subsides a little bit, and the chills and the aches go away a bit. And so I'm like, oh, okay, my fever's breaking. But I am pouring with sweat. Like my eyelids are sticking to my face, and the insides of my elbows are sticky. My shorts that I was wearing were like soaked with sweat. My shirt was sticking to my back, and I'm trying to follow along with what I'm being taught here. And I'm just like, I feel like I had been outside in like 95-degree heat running, is how sweaty I was.
Oh.
So, but since then, I have it's been an upward trajectory. So,
well, that's good. That's good.
Well, hey, if I had to go through that to give you your idyllic, heavenly-like week, I'll gladly do it for you, my friend.
Yeah. Our happiness is on a seesaw. Yeah. Maybe I smashed my face into the lake when your fever broke.
We were the yin and the yang of last week. Anyway.
All right. Let's get down to business. How did we leave Bran Stark? Last we saw of Bran, he was hiding in the crypts of Winterfell along with Rickon, the Reeds, Osha, and Hodor. He spent a lot of time warging with Summer, which also served as the group's eyes and ears. When, through Summer, he saw the coast was clear in the castle above, the party went topside to discover that Winterfell had been sacked and burned. The only living person was a dying Maester Luwin, who told them to split up the Stark boys and escape ASAP. Bran went with the Reeds and Hodor north to find the Three-Eyed Crow. Osha took Rickon and headed for the King's Road. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Summer's on the prowl in the Wolfswood. He's climbed to a high ridge overlooking much of the forest. His forest. He is, after all, the prince of the Wolfswood. All who roam the forest go in fear of him. Far below, he spots a pack of wolves, his small cousins. He's reminded of his own pack, he and his 4 siblings, and another who stood separate. His thoughts then turn toward his lost sister, and a sadness creeps into him.
A shift in the wind breaks his train of thought. Deer, fear, blood. The smells wake a hunger in him, and off he goes again, full speed ahead, down an even steeper ridge than the one he'd just climbed. The source is a downed deer, ringed by his little cousins. The male and female leaders are already enjoying the feast, as the deer's last flicker of life is extinguished.
Summer leaps into their midst. Some wolves scatter, one attacks. The bigger direwolf easily dispatches him, leaving only the pack leader to face the prince. The big old wolf isn't scared of his younger, larger adversary. Summer respects that fearlessness and looks forward to the fight.
The pair fight long and hard, with others jumping in to aid their leader at times. However, in the end, Summer's size and strength is too much for the leader, and he submits. Summer licks the older wolf's wounds, then turns to enjoy his prize. But as he tears a mouthful of flesh from the deer, he hears Hodor. Quickly, the large, grinning face of a man takes shape through the vision of his wolf cousins.
Reluctantly, Bran wakes from his wolf dream. He's no longer in a vast forest, but rather a vault underneath a broken old tower. Tumbledown Tower, Bran's dubbed it. Jojen rounds out those in the vault. He tells Bran he was gone for too long. He wonders if Bran marked any trees while in Summer's body. Bran admits he'd forgotten, like always.
Bran admits to himself that yes, he does always forget, but that's because there's so many cooler things to do as a direwolf. He tells Jojen about being the prince of the woods. Jojen astutely points out that he already is a prince. This concerns Jojen that Bran is beginning to forget who he is versus who his wolf is, and makes Bran spell out the difference between the two.
Meera enters carrying fish and frogs for dinner. Over dinner, Jojen announces that they should be on their way tomorrow. Meera objects the tower is safe and there's plenty of food to catch and kill. Jojen says it's not where they're supposed to be, and so begins an argument they've clearly had many times.
Meera knows Jojen wants to get beyond the wall. That's great and all, but they're on foot and it's a long way to the wall. And once they get there, how do they find this three-eyed crow in the vast wilderness that lies beyond? Jojen unhelpfully adds that maybe the crow will find them. Bran sides with Meera, steal some horses and ride for Last Hearth, seat of the Umbers.
Jojen points out that Bran needs a better teacher than Jojen, so they must go. This alarms Bran. He still fears the three-eyed crow and only wants Jojen as his teacher. He offers to be a model pupil from now on. Jojen explains that he's no warg, so he can't possibly hope to teach Bran all he needs to know. Bran argues that Jojen helped him open his third eye, but Jojen voices his worry that Bran opened his third eye so far that now he'll fall through and never return again.
Meera leaves it to Bran to make the call. He's their prince after all. Stay in the safety of the tower, but miss out on the advanced training that could take his gifts to new heights, or risk capture and make for the wall or Last Hearth. Bran considers Last Hearth, Carhold, even White Harbour, all seats of loyal Stark bannermen, places of safety. Of course, they could also be dead, just as he'd be if he'd been caught by the Bolton bastard. Stay here and they'll be safe, but he's still broken, with tears rolling down his cheeks. He asks to go to the crow. He wants to fly.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Okay. So we were discussing this week on the Discord server our favorite and least favorite POV chapters, and not that I dislike Bran chapters necessarily. They're just, if I had to rank them, they'd probably rank toward my bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because Bran, his story is naturally slow moving, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it has to be this sort of like, I mean, I literally don't remember where he's going, but I mean, it's going to take him a long time because
Meera points out why.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the other thing that Meera, I think it was Meera mentions in this is how obvious they are. You know, I mean, basically, it's a crippled boy.
Bran points that out. Jojen points that out.
Right. A crippled boy and Hodor and two direwolves and two Crannog men. It's like it couldn't be more obvious. So they literally can't talk to anyone. They can't trust a single person.
Yes. They do stand out in the crowd. They're like their own version of the Bloody Mummers. They've got quite an eclectic mix here. It hasn't been all that long since we last saw Bran. He was, in fact, the last chapter of A Clash of Kings. So, being that these are all chapter first POVs of the of this book, he's the most recent that we've run into. I looked it up. We aired our last Bran episode on May 24th, so it's It's only been goodness. Wow. I guess 3 months, just under 3
3
months.
months.
Yeah, so it has been a while, I guess, but not as long as some of the others.
But for all Bran's hardships, his life is good as Summer. He's the apex predator in the Wolfswood. He's strong and fast and feared by others. Some of the things that he dreamed of as a child of being as a man, he can be as a wolf.
Right, which he no longer feels that he can be as a
Right.
man without the use of his legs. And
Yeah.
you certainly can understand why Jojen fears Bran being enticed by the wolf world and getting stuck as Summer. Jojen points out later in this chapter that he doesn't understand this gift. So maybe he's just thinking it's a possibility that Bran could get stuck in Summer and no longer be able to get back out to his human body, or maybe this is a thing that he knows could happen.
Well, I think he's seen enough evidence of it in Bran. I mean, they were saying the last time he had a wolf dream down in the crypts, he'd been out for 2 days or something.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
That's clearly dangerous to a small child to not be eating or interacting with the world for 2 days.
Very good point. Very good point. Summer, he senses his brothers and sisters from afar, and I wondered if that was some sort of animal spiritual connection of a pack given to all animals in this A Song of Ice and Fire world, because we don't really have any other animal POVs. or is it Bran in Summer's body feeling the presence of his siblings and Summer's siblings, who are also, we're starting to get evidence that maybe some of the other Stark kids are wargs as well. And so it's kind of like Bran's feeling the presence of his siblings because they're also sort of wargs. And in the same time, Summer is feeling the presence of his siblings because there's a connection between the two pieces.
Yeah, so my thought was that it was Summer and the wolves, and that Bran accesses it when he's part of Summer.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I thought that was because Summer mentions the fact that one's lost. So I wonder if Bran no longer has sort of like the ability to sort of sense Sansa because she doesn't have the direwolf.
Right.
But
yes,
it's hard to be sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely a sense that there is the potential for long distance communication.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we saw it with him and Jon. It wasn't
him and Jon, yeah.
It was very abstract. Bran
Right.
showed up as a weirwood tree, but
Right.
they did communicate. So
Yeah.
and that causes me to wonder if might Bran be able to sense all wargs that aren't just his family? Might he be able to identify another warg?
Interesting.
And the bit of evidence that causes me to wonder if this is possible is it seemed like that eagle that attacked Ghost must have known Ghost was something unusual, unless that eagle makes a habit of randomly attacking huge direwolves.
Good point. But also maybe just a thought here. Perhaps as you become a more adept warg, you're able to be more animal-like and less obviously a warg.
Sure.
But wait, but Ghost wasn't being warged by Jon. Oh, he was at the time, right?
Yeah.
But like an experienced person who wargs might be able to inhabit the animal without making the animal seem any different, is what I'm suggesting.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas Jon was a complete rookie.
He was. And speaking of Jon and Ghost, Summer sets Ghost aside as an afterthought in his pack.
Yeah. Which was interesting, of course, because we never had the wolves' POV before they were found by the children. But he was found slightly apart from the others, like he had been kicked out a little bit.
Good point. Yes. Right, yeah. Yeah, it's not entirely clear because this is kind of a split brain situation, whether it's a statement on Ghost as an outcast of the pack or Jon as an outcast of Bran's siblings.
Good point.
Except for that, there are things like he stands apart. That could be either of them because they both stand apart. No voice would lead you to believe that he's talking specifically about Ghost. I think the line is the white who has no voice.
Right.
So,
but at the same time, that also very much applies to Jon, if you think about it, because everybody else is a princess of Winterfell. Jon is not, so he doesn't have the same. So, I mean, yes, I think we know Ghost is notoriously quiet amongst the direwolves, and so it probably was literally about Ghost, but metaphorically about Jon as well.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah. And, of course, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, noteworthy fact, the only sibling they've met in a dream is Jon and Ghost, at least that we've gotten a POV look at. So,
yeah. So it makes you wonder if Ghost, the pup Ghost, wasn't pushed away from the others, but sort of like wandered away from the others.
Yeah.
Wanted to be an outsider, because it doesn't feel like Summer's treating him differently. It doesn't feel like Summer thinks of him as an outcast, just more aloof.
Right. Yeah, it's just weird that he says 4 siblings plus the one who stands aside.
Right. So it was when he's pulled out of the dream by Hodor, of course, shouting Hodor. Summer thinks that he's having boy's thoughts, not wolf's thoughts. And so, again, you're right, there is definitely a melding of the minds here. It's it is both Summer and Bran having the thoughts. But when that happens, when he hears Hodor calling Hodor, Summer recognizes it for what it is, but doesn't react to it, whereas, of course, Bran does react to it because he's, being called home.
Right, he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to come home for dinner. And then, so he wakes up, and he's back in this Tumbledown Tower, and Jojen starts asking him if he did certain very specific tasks, such as marking a tree, or bringing he only asks about the tree, but Bran adds in his own thoughts that there's other tasks Jojen has asked him to do, such as bring a rabbit back in Summer's mouth uneaten, or line up a row of rocks, things that would be very un-Summer-like, things that you wouldn't expect Summer naturally to do. Yeah.
And clearly the idea here is, can Bran start to control Summer rather than just be along for the ride?
Yes, exactly.
And Bran, because he wants to go back, he offers to go back and do these things, but Jojen's like, I don't think so, mister.
Yeah, and as he says, I'll go back and do it right now if you want. And he thinks to himself, after I eat the deer and fight with those little wolves some more, he's already getting sidetracked before he even gets back in there yet, so...
Yeah.
But like we were saying at the beginning, there's a lot of cool things that he can do as Summer that he can't do as Bran. And the line is something along the lines of so many things to see, smell, and hunt, and he could run. There was nothing better than that. And so, again, you could see how it would be distracting. But it begs the question of what is Jojen's primary concern? Is it Bran spending too much time as Summer's passenger and forgetting himself? Or is it Bran enjoying time in Summer so much that he might choose willingly not to come back to his human form?
Yeah, I think those two intersect pretty strongly, but yeah, those are two different flavors of the same problem.
Right.
And I think Jojen's worried about both of them.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Yes. And Bran even thinks to himself he liked Summer's skin better than his own. So,
yeah.
You could see he's definitely got legitimate concern that young Bran might not realize the importance of staying in his human form.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to say it, but you're the one who put it in the notes. This gives off the vibe of the Lotus Eaters, and so I assume you put this in the notes to dispel the myth that your cultural references are all SpongeBob SquarePants.
Do you know where I got this thought from, though? Was from the Percy Jackson movie.
Percy Jackson, yeah.
When they got distracted, I think it was Las Vegas, right? They got distracted in the Las Vegas casino.
Honestly, you should edit that bit out.
Well,
Yeah, so Jojen persists in trying to encourage Bran to sort of take control. It's not enough to run Hunt and Howl in Summerskin. He's got to learn to be the boss of that relationship. And Bran's sort of confused. He's like, you're the one who got me to open this third eye. Now you're getting worried about it, and I think you said it in the summary, but Jojen's concern is that the third eye is now so wide open he might fall through it,
Right. Yeah. And that reminded me of way back in Bran 3 of A Game of Thrones. That's the falling crow dream. He's falling from so very high, and he saw all the things around Westeros and Essos and north of the wall. And as he looked like down below him, directly below him, he saw spires of ice rising up to impale him, and the bodies of thousands of dreamers who came before him littered around those spires. And the crow tells Bran, you must choose, fly or die. And Bran flew, and that's when the crow pecked the third eye between, in his forehead there, and Bran woke from his coma. Why am I saying all this? Is because maybe this, getting stuck in in Bran's case, a wolf dream, is one of the pitfalls that some of those other thousands of dreamers fell prey to. They couldn't control their dream of whatever variety they were having, got lost in the dream.
Yeah, yeah. And you'd think that for most of them, presumably, they weren't crippled. So it's the temptation for Bran is that much higher. Because
right.
It lets him relive, the freedom he used to have.
Yeah. And Jojen says to him, the chains are off. He calls him the winged wolf.
The winged wolf.
And he says, the chains are off. Still, you don't fly. So, maybe he flew in that dream, meaning I'm willing to try. I'm willing to do what I need to do. But he's not flying. And maybe that's because he doesn't have the proper training and he won't be able to fly until he can get to this three-eyed crow.
Yeah.
And then runs the risk of being consumed by summer.
Yep. So Bran says that he was the Prince of the Woods, which would be a big deal for most of us, but he's forgetting the fact he is an actual prince and has responsibilities. And he thinks back on Winterfell and thinks about the Frey cousins, the two Walders, and he wonders if they were dead. He didn't see their bodies in Winterfell, but there were a lot of dead bodies, so we don't know what's happened to them.
Yeah, so about the prince thing, we get from his thoughts that he's not very keen on being the Prince of Winterfell because he thinks it's a broken down castle and he might never see it again. And what's the point of being a prince of a place you're never going to see again? And so you can see why being the Prince of the Green, as he calls this, he thinks of himself as Summer, has more appeal because he's able to feel like a powerful prince. Nobody can mess with him in those woods. He calls the shots. He does what he wants. It's, I'm sure, a very intoxicating feeling for one, and the type of helpless situation that Bran's in the real world, in his human world.
Yeah.
And about the Walders, just a reminder, because it has been since May that we talked about the Walders, and what we talked about Bran last time, is at the end of Theon 6, which is the last Theon chapter where the Boltons turn on Sir Roderick's force and take them by surprise, and then they turn on Theon and take the Ironborn in Winterfell by surprise. As the chapter is concluding, Ramsay tells his men, save the Walders, burn the rest.
Right.
And we had considered whether it was a sign that he's in communication with his father because his father has recently married Walda Frey. So might have been a save my family. Whatever you do whatever you're going to do, but save my family before you do it.
Yeah. But actually, I would take a slightly different tack to that. Not save my family, but don't offend my family.
Oh, yes,
I
sure.
Can't imagine either of them actually care about the Walder boys, but...
Yes, good point.
Yeah. So, Bran thinks that Jojen's dreams always come true, but he does have the one exception, because he dreamed that Bran was dead, but he kind of isn't dead. But he kind of is dead at the same time. I mean, the dream did come true. It just
Right.
there was subterfuge to the dream that Jojen didn't see.
Yes. That was back in Bran 5 of A Clash of Kings, Jojen dreamed that Bran and Rickon lay dead at Reek's feet, and Reek was skinning the faces off the boys. But the reality of it was that Reek had talked Theon into killing the Miller's boys, and Reek flayed those boys' faces to make them less recognizable. And that's why he's sort of dead, but obviously isn't dead. The only thing there is that the two groups most likely to hunt for Bran and Rickon would be the Ironborn and the Boltons.
Because they're the two who know of the subterfuge.
Right. Ramsay, as Reek, knows that they didn't kill Bran and Rickon.
Right.
And Theon does too, of course, because he was part of it as well. But as best I can remember, he didn't tell his sister Asha. And he had all of the other members of the Ironborn that were there at that Miller's residence. He had them all killed.
Okay,
so
that's right, he did, yes.
So he and Reek are really the only two that know that.
Yeah.
But we don't know what the deal is with Theon right now. He could be dead, we haven't heard, or he could be a captive of Ramsay.
Yeah. But that is unfortunate that they're fleeing. The only people who know they're alive are their enemies.
Right, so...
Their friends will all believe them dead.
Yes.
Although, so did word get out of Winterfell that they were dead? I think it did, didn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But so, Jojen says it helps that his smokescreen that Bran is dead helps keep him safe, but in reality, the people who want to do him harm already know he's not dead.
Yeah. So Bran mentions that they could go to White Harbour because Wyman Manderley laughed a lot and wanted to build ships and didn't treat him as a cripple the way some did. It's not quite the right direction, and Osha's going... Osha we assume is going south. She was headed to the King's Road. If she was heading north, then heading to the King's Road, they'll bump into each other in about 5 minutes.
They will. Yeah, she never specified which way she was going to go, but yes, the logic would be don't go the same direction we're going. He would just be taking parallel paths to the same place.
Yeah.
But Summer, at the very beginning of this chapter, mentions that his angry brother with the green eyes, is fading further and further away. So it sounds like they're going in some direction, leading them further away from each other.
Yes. But Bran actually said that they could steal a boat to get there, so they presumably wouldn't cross paths if they went that way, because
True.
They wouldn't take the boat down the King's Road. That would be weird. So Jojen muses on Lewin's final advice to them. The Iron Men are on the stony shore. East, the bastard of Bolton. Mokaelin and Deepwood Mott have fallen. The heir to Serwyn is dead, and the Castellan of Torrance Square too. War everywhere, each man against his neighbour. Paints a pretty grim picture for the state of the North, and especially for children trying to figure out who their friends are.
Oh yeah, right.
Because that level of instability, I mean, it's kind of like Arya. She can't trust anyone because everything's so much in flux that, today's friend might be tomorrow's enemy.
Yes, solid point. Yeah, it's definitely... I mean, while the Starks were in power in the north, as they had been for 8,000 years, you felt like the north was one of the most united of the kingdoms of Westeros. And now they're completely rudderless, where a neighbor can't trust a neighbor, and there's no one leading there's no leading force. It's a complete chaos, a complete vacuum of power.
Yeah, but of course, Robb could be heading back north to take it all back, and that could re-establish control. And also, if Bran could find a friendly home in which to stay, that could become a centre of, the resistance to whatever's going on now. And
that's a good point. If they could get word out, they go to Last Hearth, they get word out that Bran Stark is alive and well at Last Hearth, and maybe the others will rally around the Umbers in Last Hearth. But so there was a lot going on in that final advice from Maester Luwin. So just a real quick rundown of what's going on there. Deepwood Motte, which is the seat of House Glover, was the castle that was taken by Asha. That was part of the plan that Balon, their father, put together. Torrhen Square, that's where Dagmar Cleftjaw sieged in order to draw Roderick out of Winterfell. And now it seems that it's fallen after they rode back to Winterfell. And so the Castellan that he refers to is Leopold Tallheart. And that's because Leopold's brother Helman Tallheart is south with Robb. Well, right now he's technically heading toward Duskendale.
Right.
Young Clay Serwyn was holding down Castle Serwyn while his father Medgar was with Robb. But we know Medgar died at Harrenhal before Arya could tell him who she was. That's the one Arya was originally going to trust with her secret.
That's right. Yep.
He was wounded and died. Now Clay, the young Clay, who's Bran's friend, was killed by the Bolton attack on Roderick's force. And we've mentioned many times that it's the closest... Castle Serwyn is the closest castle to Winterfell, and they're very close friends with the Stark. Now, I will say, in the appendix of this book, A Storm of Swords, so this isn't really a spoiler, Clay's sister, Janelle, is still at the castle, so I guess she would be the lady of Serwyn right now.
Right. So, the kids discuss staying or leaving. Jojen thinks he needs to get Bran to a better teacher. He talks about the fact that he's limited in his own... What he can teach him is limited to what he understands and knows, and there are things that Bran has in his toolkit that Jojen has no clue about. And that's north of the wall. But Meera counters, there's, it's a long way to the wall, and there's an even vaster tract of area north of the wall. How are they going to find this three-eyed crow? Jojen throws out that perhaps he'll find us, and you would like to think that if the three-eyed crow is some mystical teacher who's going to bring Bran up to the next level of whatever he is, that he wouldn't just make him wander around pointing. Actually.
Yes. It didn't work. He didn't word it in the most confidence building way there.
Yeah.
Perhaps he'll find us. That's not exactly, because Mira's got a very good point. First of all, she says, how many three-eyed crows are there? Is there one? Are there many? Maybe they'll get north of the wall and every crow has three eyes. And they'll be like, are you the three-eyed crow? Are you the three-eyed crow? But on top of that, we learned from from Tyrion 2 of A Game of Thrones that they were riding 18 days north of Winterfell and were still just in the Wolfswood. So It's a long way to go. Tyrion was amazed at the enormity of the north, and he had just ridden from King's Landing all the way to Winterfell. Right. So, and it's a wild track going through the Wolfswood, and if they're not riding the King's Road to make themselves less noticeable, it's going to take even longer. So,
I do question Jojen's contention that that the person has to know better than the person you're trying to teach, because, for instance, sort of like bringing it to sports, the best sports people in the world all have trainers. Those trainers are not as good as the people they're training, but they, But I do understand in this particular situation, he's talking about areas where he just has no experience, so can't do anything.
Yes, right. I guess so. That is the issue. Like I said, he doesn't, we don't know if he even knows whether it's possible to get stuck in your warg partner. He's insinuating that he knows, but we don't know for sure whether he's just thinking that seems dangerous or if he knows this is a possibility that has happened.
Yeah. So Meera argues to stay put because the Tumbledown Tower is safe, it's got plenty of food sources. People aren't actively looking for them, they could stay there indefinitely. But the problem there is, what is that achieving? I mean,
right.
the one thing that would achieve, and it would achieve this, if Robb comes back and reestablishes Winterfell under Stark control, it's a shorter walk home.
It is, yes. And that is something Bran spends a lot of time talking about as a possibility in this chapter. And we know that there's Ironborn at Mackelly, and it's supposedly impenetrable from the south if Mackelly is staffed. Maybe being Northmen, they know some way around they know a loophole, but it's problematic for sure. So, but it would be nice to think, and you can certainly understand why Bran, who's lost everything, Hodor is really the only thing in his life that he's had, beyond a year. So could certainly understand why he'd think about it.
The other thing, of course, is if they do stay there, sure, they can survive, they can eke out an existence, but that existence will be, it's not helping Bran. I think Jojen's role here is to help Bran achieve what Bran might be able to achieve.
Right.
And staying in a vault under a broken tower is not going to do that.
Right.
He'll get better at warging, perhaps, but he'll just lose himself to the warging and never achieve anything else. That seems to be the inevitable outcome if they stay put.
Yeah, and you could certainly understand, from Jojen's perspective, that's a lot of pressure. He's 13, and he's now seeing, I taught this kid to open his third eye, and I'm seeing some serious danger signs here that I might have awoken a monster, and now I've put his life at risk. I got to get him to someone who can train him better as soon as possible.
Yeah. The other options that were discussed, of course, were Last Hearth, Carhold, White Harbour. We don't know that he wouldn't be safe with the Karstarks. They've been loyal Stark bannermen for a long time, but the timing would be unfortunate.
It would.
Given that two of Rickard Karstark's sons were killed by Jaime Lannister, who has recently been released from captivity by Catelyn Stark, mother of Brandon.
Yes, and he was already upset about
he was.
Jaime living. Yes. Jaime not being dead already had Rickard almost at the point of revolting on his king. And now, if he finds out that Jaime's been released for nothing, might not be best to have your a member of your family staying with the member of his family.
Yes.
But you never know. So Bran learns that Jojen can't continue to teach him. He needs a better teacher. And this kind of snaps Bran's attention. Like, oh boy, I need to be a better pupil or I'm going to lose the teacher who I enjoy working with. And he's going to make me start working with the Three-Eyed Crow who I fear. So we didn't really know that Bran feared this Three-Eyed Crow, but he admits to himself that he does. But like we've been talking about, the fear that Jojen has is we don't get him to this Three-Eyed Crow, Bran's going to fall through that third eye and never come back. And, you'd certainly imagine that Jojen would blame himself if he allowed that to happen.
Yeah. And Jojen explains that he himself is not a green seer. The green seers had more capabilities than he has. He only is a boy who has green dreams, which was one of the things that green seers did. And so Bran's gifts far exceed Jojen's own, and that's why he wants to find the Three-Eyed Crow.
Right.
But the whole chapter basically boils down to the final few paragraphs. I mean, do they stay or do they go? If they go, where do they go? It seemed all the way through the chapter that Bran was going to side with Meera, sort of like to either stay put or perhaps, go find a friendly place.
Right, which he literally did. He voiced, we should do what Meera
times.
wants to do and get horses and go to Last Hearth.
Yeah, but the reason he flip-flops at the end is because it all comes down to the fact that, Jojen has, I think, convinced him he is the winged wolf, and he can fly. He can do, metaphorically, great things, and has to find a way to access those abilities. And
right.
Going hiding at Carhold is not going to do that.
No, yes, exactly. It's certainly a risky move, but all the options have inherent risk, and this option is the one they originally... This is the reason why the Reeds came to Winterfell, to break Bran of the stone chains, the winged wolf of those stone chains, and now they need to see it through to get him to his ultimate teacher. And so, and this is the one with Mac's benefit, possibly over... His thought is, all the other places I go, I still don't have the use of my legs.
Right, exactly.
Now, does that indicate that he believes that this three-eyed crow will be able to fix his legs? That it's unclear. Or is he just think, well, all these other places, I'm still the same boy that I am right now. At least with the three-eyed crow, I might not have use of my legs, but I can fly. Not physically, probably, but...
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, because they use the word fly, not the word run, it would be a stretch for Bran to think that this means he's going to be healed. If the three-eyed crow could make you run, then maybe he would be thinking, he's going to fix my legs.
True, yes.
But you got to imagine, I mean, I think he loves to be in summer. He loves the warging, wants to do that all the time. One of the things that he might be able to do is to do that on demand whenever he wants,
right.
Do that as much as he wants, but he has to be trained to do it, otherwise it's going to kill him,
Right. Yeah.
Well, there we are. Do you have some background for us?
I do. Well, since Tumbledown Tower is in the Wolfswood and Summer is the Prince of the Wood, I thought we'd take a look more closely at the forest itself. And it is quite a large forest. In fact, I haven't seen this stated anywhere, but based on the maps, it looks like by far the largest forest on Westeros. At least south of the wall, it's kind of hard to tell on the maps what's forest versus mountain north of the wall. But as best I can tell, it's the largest forest on Westeros. Anyway, it stretches across the northwest part of the north. So from as far west as Sea Dragon Point, and it goes a bit further south than Castle Serwyn, which is south of Winterfell. It then runs all the way northeast past Last Hearth, which is quite a long stretch. And the King's Road actually runs through a large chunk of it. So, like we were saying, if Osha and Rickon were on the King's Road heading north, this could end up being a reunion faster than they anticipated. The map on a Wiki of Ice and Fire does give a location for Tumbledown Tower. I'm not exactly sure how accurate it is, but it's a bit northwest of Winterfell and west of the King's Road, but not very far. They've not gone a great distance yet. But the mountains prevent you from getting too far west from the King's Road, and so they can't get too far away from that major thoroughfare. And actually, at one point, Long Lake pins you in on the King's Road on the east side, and the mountains on the west side, creating a bit of a bottleneck right there. So, it does narrow down a good bit. And actually, it gets the wood gets its name due to the significant amount of wolves that call the forest home. And back in Tyrion 2, we learned that Tyrion 2 of A Game of Thrones, that is, we learned that it's specifically due to the cacophony of wolf howls at night that it's called the Wolfswood.
Thank you very much. So, comparison with the television show, the book chapter can be summarized as Bran making the decision to head north, at Jojen's suggestion. In the show, Bran, Hodor, Osha, and Rickon had decided to head for the wall prior to meeting the Reeds. Jojen arrives and explains warging and how the three-eyed raven is something different, deeper. It allows you to see the future, the past, and the present, but the present, but far away. You know,
right?
One of the things that's,
yes.
And Osha doesn't like Jojen very much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is two characters who aren't intersecting in the book anymore, but
right.
in the TV show they decided to put a little friction between those two.
Okay.
Pedantry corner. I couldn't find anything in this one, but it reminded me how bothered I was by how long he warged as Summer in the last chapter. Days. It just seems crazy. I mean, like,
yes.
And apparently the secret to waking him up is just to shout Hodor. I mean, it's not. It's not like. So they could have done it any time, you know,
right?
Sort of,
Maybe
it feels like he can go back, wake him up, give him a hearty meal, send him back. You know?
Yeah, maybe half-hour increments.
Exactly. but nothing specifically in this one.
All right.
News and notes?
Well, news and notes. George Martin is healthy and back at his keyboard.
Much like Mackelly.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's the one thing we have in common. In fact, aside from digging out from under a mountain of emails, he's back to writing Winds of Winter.
Hooray.
He's actually hoping to wrap up a POV storyline or two in the book this week. So that's positive.
Definitely.
And he reports that there's been work done on the development of the other Game of Thrones successor shows with HBO, both the animated and live action versions. And he admits that the process is long and, as he puts it, chancy, and he has no idea how many will make it to the end, but he's excited about how some of the progress is coming along.
Interesting. And on the subject of TV shows, House of the Dragon airs this Sunday, August 21st, which will be very exciting.
It is. It's finally here. It's finally here. And speaking of House of the Dragon...
Are we going to do anything exciting for House of the Dragon, Mackelly?
I believe we are. So I really tried to think of a way that we could do a live stream with our Lords Paramount and Royal Kingsguard from Buy Me a Coffee. I couldn't really come up with a good way to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our live video chat with the Royal Kingsguard and the Lords Paramount the following day, on Monday, August 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, U.S., Canada, to discuss all that we saw the night before.
Awesome. So
And
I gotta watch it now.
Yes. I
gotta watch it on the day. No more waiting for 3 episodes to pile up. Right. Okay, got it.
Next week. Starting next week, you can do that.
Okay. Well, that's going to be fun. I mean, A, I'm excited about the show, and B, that'll be great to talk to everyone about it because
yes.
Because what I'll find is that I am the least informed and most ignorant person on the call because everyone else will know all kinds of stuff that is passing me by.
You have Fire and Blood. You
I know. I've read it, yeah. But, you know, it's slid off like Teflon.
You didn't read it this week.
Yes. All right, let's conclude. The group is leaving the relative safety and security for a chance of some kind of ultimate prize of trading with the Three-Eyed Crow. It's a gamble for sure. I mean, you're right. The map makes this whole thing look very unfeasible to even get to the wall. Never mind get beyond it.
On foot, on foot and walking through like the heart of the forest, not even up the King's Road, is going to take an incredibly long time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I will say, I think Jojen's plan of getting Bran as Summer to bring them back an uneaten rabbit is probably a good idea. They're going to need that. I mean, they've got like 200 meals they're going to need along this wall.
Yes, and that's one of Meera's points. Is this place has
the food,
has food and safety and security. But like you mentioned, it's really the only option for real change here. You go to Last Hearth, go to Carhold, go to White Harbor. You're basically just hoping that either Robb comes and saves them, or that the North rallies around Bran's presence in one of those locations. And
most pressingly, that particular whichever family you choose has not turned against the Starks.
Yes. Solid point. Yes, definitely worth noting. Of course, if they do decide to stop at Last Hearth, it's not something that needs to be decided immediately because it's kind of at the end of the Wolfswood. So
Right.
you've probably got a long while to argue about whether they should stop it. By the time they get to Last Hearth, they might be like, no, I can't walk anymore. My feet are killing me.
Exactly. And that's Bran. My feet are killing me. I'm just sitting here. So they presumably they're heading for Castle Black. That's where I would go if I was heading to the Wall. Although if they're trying to sneak through, then I mean I don't know what traffic is like through the Wall. Whether the Night's Watch approve of that kind of thing. Oh, you want to go north of the Wall? Here, I'll open the door for you.
You can't imagine. Now, Bran doesn't know that Jon is not at Castle Black right now.
Right.
If he's thinking, I'm going to go to Castle Black, talk to my brother, tell him I'm going by myself north of the Wall to meet up with the three-eyed crow, he's going to pack him... Well, you can't pack him off back to Winterfell, but he's certainly not going to approve of this plan. So,
are you sure about this? Yeah, this strange 13-year-old kid had a dream about it.
Yeah, good luck passing that one off. Exactly. I mean, the whole thing, they're following a 13-year-old to the Wall and then into the vast north beyond the Wall. There's certainly a gamble there.
Yes, and just as a reminder, the dead are rising north of the Wall.
Oh, yes.
Just one other thing.
You'd think the three-eyed crow might, throw that into a dream. Hey, just so you know, keep an eye out.
Lest the three-eyed crow lures people to the others who's working with them.
Could be.
So yeah, the Bran flip-flopped on his decision, but I mean, I think he went from what he wanted to do to what he really needed to do. And
right.
So
yes,
probably just when asked to make the actual decision, he became the Prince of Winterfell again instead of just the 9-year-old who wanted comfort and safety.
Yeah, right. When it came down to the final decision.
Yeah.
And Bran seems to be falling into a trap of intoxication, of being in Summer's body.
Yeah, and that's causing rising concern for Jojen, which makes sense.
Yeah, and Jojen's just a boy himself.
Yeah.
So maybe he doesn't have enough sway over Bran to convey the seriousness of the situation.
Although he gives off a different vibe, old Nan referred to him as little grandfather, right?
Right, yes. And in fact, Bran in this chapter thinks, why do we listen to Jojen? Why is he the one always calling the shots? He's so much older than I am.
And there's definitely the hints here that the Stark kids, except Sansa, but adding Jon, might be able to have some kind of remote communication through the wolves. It feels like Bran's the only one who's going to be trained in this.
Right.
But perhaps he can remotely teach them how to do it.
Oh, yeah. He in his conversation with Jon, that leads to the possibility. He was instilling information to Jon through the werewood.
Yep. So there are 3 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a review. There's no better way to get the word out. You could buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com, or you could buy us an Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. And if you would consider it, you could become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level. You would be welcomed, and we are grateful to those who have already done so.
Absolutely. And of course, you could reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at @GhostHarrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.